There are five main skill areas that we evaluate for in child development: visual motor, language, motor, social, and adaptive. Each area has its normal range for any particular age, and beyond that range, any of the findings in any area would be considered to be abnormal. Abnormal development in one area increases the likelihood of abnormality in another area. Developmental delay is specifically defined as a developmental quotient less than 75, and the definition of a developmental quotient is the developmental age that one gets on testing over the chronological age, that is the actual age of the child, times 100. Major developmental disorders include the following lists: mental retardation, which has many possible definitions, but the one that we will use will be an IQ of less than about 70 to 75, plus related limitation in at least two adaptive skill areas, communication disorders and learning disabilities, cerebral palsy, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the pervasive developmental disorders, which we otherwise call the autism spectrum disorders. Developmental evaluation starts with a thorough history and physical exam, and then performing one or more developmental tests to look at age-appropriate skill areas. The most commonly used developmental test in early childhood is the Denver 2 developmental assessment, where we screen apparently normal children between the ages of 0 to 6. It allows for the identification of possible delays. However, in infants who are born under 38 weeks gestation, we first have to correct the age for prematurity up to 2 years, and then apply the Denver testing for the corrected age of a premature infant. Vignette: an infant can sit up with its back straight, has started crawling, has a pincer grasp, and plays peekaboo. What age is most appropriate for this baby? We commonly test for primitive reflexes in the newborn as part of the normal physical exam, including neurological examination. Primitive reflexes all have their onset during antenatal life, except for the parachute reflex, which does not start until the second half of the first year of postnatal life and is not fully developed until the end of the first year. All reflexes come and go in an orderly sequence, and the only one that persists throughout life is the parachute. This means that the absence of reflex when it should be present and the continued presence of one that should have disappeared is abnormal, and you should then use the rest of your history and physical, including neurological exam and developmental exam, to at least be able to come to a differential diagnosis. So let's look at the most common of the primitive reflexes that we test for. And the picture shows the Moro reflex, which is that when the baby is suddenly startled by pulling his arms out to the side and letting them go, you will get head extension and flexion of the arms and the legs. It appears at birth and disappears by 4 to 6 months of age. Its central nervous system origin are the brainstem vestibular nuclei. The grasp reflex, or the palm or plantar grasp reflex, is elicited by putting a finger in the palm or stroking the finger from the heel anteriorly to the toes. And the primary response, as you can see in the picture, is that the baby's fingers curl around the examiner's fingers, or the toes curl downward around the examiner's fingers. This typically appears at birth and disappears by 4 to 6 months of age. Once again, its CNS origin is brainstem nuclei. To elicit the rooting reflex, we stimulate the side of the mouth, either with the fingers or perhaps with a pacifier or a nipple attached to a bottle, in which case the mouth turns to that side. Appears at birth, disappears by 4 to 6 months, and the CNS origin is brainstem and trigeminal nuclei. We elicit the placing reflex by stimulating the dorsum of one of the feet, perhaps by rubbing the back of the foot along the side of a table, in which case the baby will step up first with the other foot and then the foot that's stimulated. This appears at birth, disappears at 4 to 6 months, and its origin is cerebral cortex. The asymmetric tonic neck is elicited by stabilizing the baby in the supine position by putting one hand on the trunk and then using your other hand to turn the baby's head to the side away from you. Upon doing this, the baby will extend the arm and the leg ipsilateral to the side that you turn the head and flex the contralateral arm and leg so that we have a typical fencing posture in the supine position. This one does not appear until birth to 1 month of age, so it's highly variable over the first month, and it's important to keep in mind because you may not have a mature asymmetric tonic neck until a full-term infant is 1 month of age. However, as usual, it disappears at about 4 to 6 months of age, and its CN origin is brainstem vestibular nuclei. And again, the parachute reflex is the one that doesn't appear until later in the first year of life and stays for the entire life. When we simulate a fall by holding the baby and accelerating downward toward the floor, the arms and the legs will extend as though one were falling through the air. Any adult would do this as well. This appears at the earliest at 6 to 8 months of life, perhaps even later, and it never disappears. CNS origin is brainstem vestibular nuclei. The remaining information in this chapter has to do with the developmental milestones through 5 years of age. They will be presented with respect to the major characteristic findings at particular ages related to gross motor skills, visual motor skills, language skills, and social adaptive skills. And again, we'll only talk about the only ones that are pertinent for any exam of this material at particular ages. So let's start with birth. At birth, the growth motor skill is symmetric movements in the supine position with the head flat in prone. At birth, the visual motor skills are fixing on an object at least close to the baby for a short period of time. Language skills have to do with hearing, and that is that the baby will alert to a near sound, such as the mother's voice. And the social adaptive skill is that, at least briefly, the baby will look at and regard a face, particularly one that the baby recognizes more commonly, like the mother. Next is 2 months. Gross motor skills are primarily keeping the head in the midline while held sitting and raising the head in prone and beginning to lift the chest. Visual motor skills, the baby can now follow past the midline. Language skills, the baby will smile in response to touch and voice. And social adaptive skills, the baby will recognize a parent. At 4 months, the major gross motor skills are holding the head steady, supporting on the forearms in the prone position, and rolling from prone to supine. Visual motor skills, the baby can reach with both arms together and holds the hands in the midline. Language skills, cooing, which starts at about 3 months with long vowel sounds in a musical fashion, and then laughing at 3 to 4 months, and at 4 months the baby starts to orient more specifically to voices. The social adaptive skills are primarily that the baby now likes to look around the environment. At 6 months, major gross motor skill is sitting with support, that is in the tripod position or leaning against something, and putting the feet in the mouth in the supine position. Visual motor, the baby now has developed a unilateral reach, has a raking grasp, and can transfer an object from one hand to the other hand at least one time. Language skills are described as babbling at this age. Social adaptive, the baby recognizes that someone is a stranger. At 7 months of age, the infant can roll from supine to prone, may start to crawl, and should now be able to sit without support. At 9 months, the major gross motor skill is crawling well, pulling to the standing position, and starting to cruise, which means moving along while holding on to something, let's say holding on to a table or a sofa and moving down its length. The major visual motor skills at 9 months are an immature pincer grasp, holding a bottle, and throwing an object but not overhand. Language, development of the words mama and dada, dada used indiscriminately, understanding the meaning of the word no, and understanding simple hand gestures. Social adaptive, the baby likes to play gesture games like bye-bye, peekaboo, exploring the environment with crawling and cruising. And at 12 months, the major gross motor skill will be walking. Many babies may be able to walk alone, but remember the normal is being able to walk independently by 18 months of age. The major visual motor skill is a mature pincer grasp, being able to make crayon marks on a piece of paper, and knowing object permanence, which starts to occur from 10 months of age. Remember, object permanence is knowing that an object is still there if it is hidden from view. Language skills are 1 to 2 words other than mama and dada, used appropriately now, that is mama and dada, and following a one-step command with a gesture. Social adaptive skills, imitating action, the infant comes when called, and allows somebody else to dress him or her. At 15 months, major gross motor skills are creeping upstairs, being able to walk at least a few steps backwards. Visual motor skills, scribbling and building a tower of 2 blocks by imitating somebody. Language skills, now the baby goes to 4 to 6 words, can follow a one-step command without a gesture. Social adaptive, uses a spoon and a cup, although this is variable through 18 months when it should be fully formed, the skill. At 18 months, the major general gross motor skill is running, throwing an object overhand from the standing position. Visual motor, The infant should be able to scribble spontaneously and build a tower of 3 blocks. Language skills, now there are 15 to 25 words, and the child should know 5 body parts. And from a social adaptive standpoint, the child should be able to imitate the parent in task and play in the company of other children. 24 months of age, gross motor, walking up and down steps 1 foot at a time. Visual motor, imitating a stroke up or down with a pencil, building a tower of 7 blocks, and being able to remove clothing by him or herself. Language skills, now the language set is 50 words, being able to use 2-word sentences, follow 2-step commands, and use pronouns but inappropriately. And social adaptive skills are primarily parallel play. This is playing next to another child but not interacting with them. At 3 years of age, from a gross motor standpoint, child should be able to alternate feet going upstairs and pedal a tricycle. Visual motor skills involves copying a circle, undressing completely, dressing partially, unbuttoning, and drying hands. Language skills, minimum of 250 words with 3-word sentences, the use of plurals, and now knowing all pronouns correctly. Social adaptive is now group play, sharing, taking turns, knowing the full name, age, and gender. At 4 years of age, gross motor skills primarily alternating feet going downstairs, hopping and skipping. Visual motor is copying a square, buttoning clothing, dressing completely, catching a ball. Language skills, knowing color, knowing a song from memory, asking questions. And social adaptive skills, playing cooperatively with a group and telling tall tales. And finally, at 5 years of age, general motor skills, skips alternating feet, can jump over low obstacles. Visual motor skills, copies a triangle, ties shoes, spreads with a knife. And language skills, prints first name, asks what a word means, answers all WH questions, that is, who, what, where, why, and when, tells a story, plays pretend, and knows the alphabet. Finally, we'll consider 4 of the more common possible anomalies, and the first has to do with prematurity. You must take into account the number of weeks of prematurity to assess development appropriately. That is, per the preterm age, not the chronological age. For example, if you're looking at a 6-month-old baby who was born at 32 weeks, that is 2 months preterm, you must assess them at 6 months minus 2 months of age of prematurity, which is 4 months corrected age. And you do this until the chronological age of 2 years, and then apply testing per the actual chronological age, no longer the corrected age, so that if the baby continues to be delayed at that point, we will consider it a true developmental delay. Next, remember, if there appears to be a language delay, first always consider conductive hearing loss. While we test all babies within the first month of life for hearing, we are testing for congenital sensorineural hearing loss. Over the first year of life, conducting hearing loss may occur from repeated ear infections. Next, remember to always consider autistic spectrum disorder if there is a lack of development or regression of language skills with impaired social interaction, restricted activities and interests, and stereotypical behaviors. Onset of abnormal findings must occur prior to age 3, and we do this after a complete history and physical with neurological exam and developmental testing. First step then is to perform an autism screening questionnaire. If you feel the diagnosis is likely, next step is to refer to a developmental specialist in this area. And finally, with respect to any child then found to have 1 or more areas of developmental delay, delay then, to repeat, is defined as 1 or more skills significantly below average, that is, a developmental quotient less than 75. When you find this, you must first look for a possible reason, and then the child needs developmental therapy in 1 or more areas to get the skills back as close to normal as possible.